After Effects has hundreds of tools in it, but if you want to start using it today, I think you should focus on these 3 essential tools. And then I'll tell you how to really learn this incredible software. Today we're going to make a social media animation using 3 essential tools in After Effects, which are shapes, masks, and keyframes. And I already have a couple of images imported, as you can see here, and these are all layers from a Photoshop file that I first designed and then imported, okay? So let's get going here. The first thing we want to do is set up a new composition. So I'm going to press this button here to make a new composition, and that opens this composition settings window, all right? And so what I want to do in this case is pull this down to social media portrait, which is 1080 by 1920 and 30 frames per second, okay? Or if you don't have that option, you can just set the width to 1080, the height to 1920, and the frame rate to 30. And let's talk about this duration here for 1 second. At the moment, if you want to read this time code, it's hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. So this right now is set, strangely, to 1 minute and 1 frame, okay? Yours might be set to just 30 seconds as a default, but I just think we just need this to be something a lot shorter, so I'm going to set this to like 3 seconds, okay? So I'm going to set this to 3, and then for whatever reason, I'm going to change this 1 to 0. Great, 3 seconds. Again, hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. Great. So I'm going to hit OK now. Now, before we go any farther, I kind of want to pause here and say something kind of important. I think the best way to learn is not just to watch someone else do it, but to actually do it yourself. So, you can download the same assets that I'm using in this tutorial for free to follow along. Click the link in the description to get everything. So back here in After Effects, we have made a composition. And I should say that a composition in After Effects is where you do your work, okay? It consists of a timeline that's going to be down here, as well as this viewing window, which already opened up, okay? And this is going to be like our little TV to look at our animation. Great. So first up, let's talk about the shape tool, which is up here, okay? And this is actually pretty powerful and pretty important and deep tool in After Effects, and it's also fairly intuitive. It's sort of like a little Adobe Illustrator that's in After Effects, because you can use this tool here to make different shapes, okay? Like a rectangle or a rounded rectangle or an ellipse, which is just circles and ovals, as well as polygons and stars, okay? This is a very powerful tool. Now, I should just point out that the shapes that we make with this tool are called shape layers in After Effects. So let's use this tool to make a rectangular background for our composition here. Because as you can see right now, this has a transparent background, so there's sort of nothing here. So we want to first start by filling this in with a color to make this a nice background, okay? If you do not see the transparency grid, by the way, you can always press this button to turn it on and off. Great. So what I'm going to do now to make a shape, a rectangle that fits in here exactly, okay, is just double click on this tool here, right? And when I do that, you can see that it has now filled this in with the colors that just happen to be up here, okay? So we do need to do some editing on this to make this look like the way that we want. And I find that it's easiest to do this in the Properties panel, okay? Properties panel is kind of awesome, and especially when dealing with shape layers. So you can see right here that right now I have a stroke on here, which has a 2 pixel width, and I want to turn that down to 0 because I don't want any stroke at all, okay? Additionally, I do not want obnoxious red as my fill color here. I want white, okay? So I'm going to click in this and go over here and change the fill color to white and hit OK. Great, and then as a final step for this background, I'm going to get over here into my timeline. I'm going to press return on my keyboard, type BG, which is my little code for background, press return again, all right? And then I'm going to lock that layer by pressing this button here. And the reason I'm locking that is just so I can't accidentally click on this layer and like move it or something. Great, so let's move on and keep designing this shot using the shape tool. So the next shape that I want to make is a triangle, right? So let's just pull down here until we get to the triangle tool, and oh, actually there is no triangle tool. Okay, so how do you make a triangle using these shapes? Well, you would first start with the polygon tool, okay? So I'm going to select that, and let me go up here and just give this a different fill color right now. I'm going to choose something kind of nice, like a nice light blue. Great. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, again, double click this, right? And that makes a 5-sided polygon, which I think is called a pentagon, I guess, right? And it puts it right in the center of the screen, which is a nice feature of double clicking, is that it puts the shape right in the center of the screen, okay? So we do not actually want a 5-sided polygon like this, pentagon, right? We want a triangle. So we're gonna go over here to the properties panel and change the number of points to 3. Great, now we have a triangle, cool. And I actually wanna make this a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna set the outer radius down to something smaller like 330. That's the size that I want, great. And then I'm gonna get over here, select my layer, press return. I'm gonna name this triangle 1, and I'm gonna press enter again on that, great. And the reason that I named it triangle 1 is because I actually want 2 triangles, right? So what I'm gonna do is select this again, it's already selected. I'm gonna press Command D, I'm on a Mac, and I'm gonna duplicate this, all right? So now that's called triangle 2. I'm actually gonna move that below triangle 1, just for the heck of it. I'm gonna get a little bit closer in here on my viewing window, and I'm gonna move this down just so that these kind of are right up against each other. And it's sort of like the baseline of the first triangle is balancing on the tip of the second triangle. Yeah, something like that, okay? I'm gonna press Shift and slash to fill my composition window here with the screen. Awesome. You can also use the pen tool to make shapes. In After Effects, the keyboard shortcut for the pen tool is the letter G. So if I press G, or just select this up here, I can now make shapes using the pen tool, all right? So what I wanna do is make little registration marks that are like little pluses, and I want 4 of them, and I kinda want them in the corners of my composition here, right? So what I'm gonna do is turn on my title action safety, and that'll give me like a sense of where these corners are. By the way, the keyboard shortcut for that is the apostrophe button, right? So, okay, so with my pen tool selected, I just need to set these colors the way that I want them. So I'm gonna click in fill here for 1 sec, and then I'm gonna set that to no fill, right? And then I'm gonna set my stroke to 2, and I'm gonna choose a kind of darkish gray for this, right? Not quite black, great. Now I'm gonna press Command and plus to get in closer here, and I'm with my regular arrow tool selected, I'm just holding down on the space bar to get my hand tool so that I can kind of move this around. Actually, I had my pen tool selected, not the arrow, but whatever. I'm gonna select the arrow now. Keyboard shortcut for that is V, right? Okay, so I'm gonna get in closer here, and now I'll press G again to select my pen tool. And what I wanna do is just make a kind of plus here, and then I'll move it into the corner, right? So I'm gonna click here with my pen tool, hold down on Shift and make another point here, okay? When I hold down on Shift, that makes it a straight line, great. Now, if we look here, we've got a shape layer, and in there we've got contents, and in there we've got this shape 1, all right? And in there we've got a path 1, okay? So what I wanna do actually is duplicate the path. I'm gonna hit Command and D, all right? Now I have 2 paths there, right? Right? If you twirl down here, you can see I have 2 different paths with 2 different stopwatches, right? So I'm gonna take this second one here, right? Which means that I've selected both of these 2 points. And then I'm gonna double click on this, which allows me to rotate this, okay? And I'm holding down on Shift, so I'm rotating it exactly 90 degrees here, right? And that means that I now have a nice little symmetrical plus that I've just built, okay? So I can get in here now and call my shape 1 plus 1. I'm gonna use my arrow keys, it's easier, and I'm gonna kind of move this down and put it into the corner here, right? Perfect, I love that. So now I'm gonna do is zoom back a little bit here so I can see the other corner, okay? And I'm gonna take +1 and I'm gonna Command D and duplicate this again, and I'm gonna move this down below +1, okay? I use my arrow keys again. I'm holding down on Shift and right arrow, and I'm just kind of clicking this to move over. And I know it's moving completely horizontally this way. And I'm just gonna click this into that corner, great. And just in case it isn't clear, let me turn off title action safety and deselect this. Now you can see we're making these pluses, right? And let me zoom back here. And what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna press apostrophe again to turn on my title action safety. And I'm gonna take +1 and +2, and I'm gonna duplicate these, okay, and move these down below. I'm gonna put 4 below 3 because I'm just that kind of guy. I'm gonna take 3 and 4 selected. Now again, I'm gonna move these down to the bottom by I'm just pressing Shift and my arrow key to move it down, and then when I get kind of close, I'm going to press plus and command to move in closer to see this, and now I'm just gonna kind of click these up until they're in the right place. All right, great. Now let me shift and slash to widen out, and then apostrophe again. Great. So now I've made 4 pluses or registration marks, which are right in the corners. Cool. Look how much we were able to do with the shape tool and the pen tool, which both make shape layers in After Effects. Now let's bring in the rest of our design elements. So we've got these other elements up here in this assets folder. So we kind of just want to bring those in and finish up designing our shot. Great. So I'm just going to bring in these one by one. Right up, I've got this type layer here. I'm going to hit command and slash and move that right into place. You can see that says balance now. All right, and then I've got this photo here, which I'm going to also command and slash and put there. And then finally, I've got the bottom dots, the top dots, and this School of Motion logo, which are some nice kind of secondary elements. Command and slash and put those in place too, right? Great, so now let me just finish this off by putting this in the right order and kind of finish just putting everything in the right place. Great, so the bottom and the top dots, I'm just gonna move down to the bottom above the background. The School of Motion logo, I'll actually move down below those even. Okay, I got my 2 triangles here. Oh, I've got my shape layer here that is the pluses, and I forgot to label this. So let me go ahead and hit return, call this pluses, all right? And then I've got my word here, which can be on top, and then my photo, which can be above the 2 triangles. Great. So if we wanted, we could like color these as well, like the bottom dots and the top dots. We could make these fuchsia. And by the way, if you can't see those, they're pretty faint. They're kind of these elements right here, okay? It's sort of textural elements right there and right there. Cool. Okay, so this looks good. My triangles, keep them blue. The photo, let's go ahead and make this yellow. And the pluses, we'll make green. And the balance on top, let's make that orange, okay? Always good to color code your layers so you can tell at a glance what's what. Now, the final thing that I want to do is just move these triangles up and into the right position. Right now, I just kind of made this triangle in the center, and this one I just moved down, all right? I'm going to select these 2, and I'm going to get in a little closer here. And I'm going to move these up pretty much so they're about here somewhere, okay? And I'll finesse this later. I kind of have a specific place that I want these to live, all right? Now, with all of our elements in place, we're ready to talk about the second essential tool of 3 that we're talking about today, and that is masks. Masks are like shapes, but they can be used to hide and reveal pieces of any layer, including type and imported imagery. For instance, I have an idea that I'd like to have this person's leg here look like it's kind of behind this blue triangle here, okay? So, interestingly, in After Effects, the same tools make both masks and shapes, which kind of makes sense, but it could be a little bit something to get used to, okay? And the real trick of it is if no layers are selected, these tools will make shapes. But if I have a layer selected, like the photo here, these tools will make masks, okay? So if I choose my pen tool, remember G for the shortcut, I can get in here and I can mask off this person's leg the way that I want, okay? In order to do this best, what I'm actually gonna do is select the layer here and press T to reveal the opacity, okay? And I'm gonna dial this down to 50%, so I can just kind of see that everything's in the right place, and I can kind of see the triangle through the photo. This is just a temporary step here, okay? So I'm gonna get in a little bit closer, and it looks like I did line up the triangles well. What I was hoping for is that this little like kind of bump of the person's jacket here is right there, and then the leg kind of starts right below this line here, okay? So I'm gonna select my layer, which is already selected, and I've got my pen tool selected. What I'm gonna do is just put a mask, start it getting a little bit closer, and make a mask right here, okay? That kind of cuts along this bottom part of the triangle. I'm holding shift as I click this, okay? And now I'm just gonna go like this, and again like this to complete the mask, right? Additionally, I'm gonna set the opacity back up to 100. Now, obviously, this is not what I want. This is the opposite of what I want. Let me actually back up a little bit and show that what I've done is I have contained the photo, what little of it I wanted to mask out. I actually masked that on instead of off, okay? But that's good, because there's an easy way to change that. I'm gonna select this layer, my photo, and press M, okay? And right now you see When I press M, I've got my mask information here, okay? I've got my mask path, and additionally, I've got this over here which says add at the moment. I'm gonna pull this down and make this say subtract, okay? And now, yep, now the mask is doing what I want. I'm gonna click off of that, and you can see here, if I get in a little bit closer, that it really does look nice. It's like this person's arm goes in front and then the leg goes behind. It's like a little bit of an optical illusion. So masks are super useful, and we're gonna talk about them a whole bunch more in this tutorial. Now let's talk about the third of the 3 tools that we're covering today, which are keyframes. Without a doubt, keyframes are the most essential tool in After Effects. I mean, without them, you can't animate anything. Now, here's 2 important things to consider about keyframes. 1, everything in After Effects can be keyframed. I mean everything, like effects, masks, opacity, colors, whatever. 2, there are 3 types of basic keyframes in After Effects: linear, ease, and hold. We're gonna talk about all 3 in this tutorial. So I have an idea that I'd like to animate this person on screen using a mask. Okay, so I'm gonna go up here and choose my rectangle tool. And let me get in a little bit closer and just sort of put this in place. And what I wanna do is draw a mask around the person that encompasses them entirely, okay? So to make a mask, just to say this again, first I need to select the layer, okay? I need to select my photo if I want to mask it. Otherwise, with nothing selected, I will make a shape, okay? So that's selected, and now I'm gonna marquee over this person and kind of just surround their body with this mask, all right? And when I let go, you could probably see that this part of the leg, which we had worked so hard to mask off, is now back on again, okay? And why is that? Well, in After Effects, the order of the masks matters a lot, okay? So what we have here is an orange mask that's around the person entirely, and then we have a yellow mask that's supposed to be cutting off this part of their leg, right? But because of the order of these masks, it's not working the way we want, okay? And that's because we're saying first, cut this out using a subtraction mask, okay? But then add everything inside this mask back on screen, right? But if we were to take mask 1, the yellow mask, and put it below mask 2, I just dragged it underneath, now you can see that that part of the leg is gone again the way that we want, right? Because we're telling it to first add everything that's inside the orange mask, and then second, subtract what's inside the yellow mask. Great, I hope that makes sense. Now let's go ahead and animate the mask. So to begin with, okay, what I'm gonna do is twirl down this kind of folder here that contains the mask parts, all right? And what we see here is that we have a mask path. And mask path is the property that we want to animate, okay? Because the path is the shape of the mask, okay? So what we're gonna do is move forward just a little bit in time, okay? Right now, I wanna have this animation so that the rectangle starts down here and goes broop and builds the person on, kind of reveals them, okay? So this position of the mask has them completely revealed, okay? So we actually wanna move ahead in time because this is like our final position of the mask, as it will, okay? The revealed, all right? So what we wanna do, okay, and to make the first keyframe in After Effects ever, okay? In this case, we want it to be on the mask path property, all right? So to make the first keyframe for mask path, or again, any property in After Effects ever, we have to press this stopwatch button, okay? When I do that, boop, now you'll see that this is turned blue, and there's like a little extra time indicator in there, okay? There's this blue thing that's lit up over here. And most importantly, where our current time indicator was, or is still, there is now a keyframe. That's what this is here, a keyframe. And that says that at this moment in time, where my current time indicator is, okay, at this moment in time, for the property mask path, the mask has this shape here, right? So now what we want to do is move back in time to the beginning of the composition, and I just did that by kind of clicking up here, which dragged my current time indicator back, or I could kind of grab it by its little blue head there as well, right? So now we're back at the beginning of the composition, and now we're gonna change the shape of the mask, and After Effects is going to make a new keyframe for us that designates that shape, all right? So here we go. I'm going to choose my selector arrow, the shortcut is V, right? I'm gonna scale this down just a little bit, okay? And what I'm gonna do is select these top 2 points of my mask path, okay? So now these are selected and these are not selected down here, which is what I want. And I'm going to now drag this down, and you can see that it's already masking the person off. I'm gonna put this down here so that they're completely masked off down there. Whoops. I'm gonna use my arrow keys to nudge this down a little bit more, okay? So basically, After Effects has now made a second keyframe right here at the beginning, all right? And then that means that we have created animation in After Effects, right? So if I scroll my current time indicator from this keyframe to this keyframe, now you can see that it animates that person on as it animates that mask path, right? Super cool. And just to explain a little bit more about keyframes here, okay, this is really important. If I take my keyframe and select it, and I move this farther away from the first keyframe, right? Or if I move the, either keyframe, if I move the keyframes, if I widen the distance between the keyframes, I am making the same amount of animation happen over a longer period of time. So in effect, I'm making the animation slower, okay? And if I take the keyframes and move them closer together, I am having the same amount of animation happen over a shorter amount of time, which means that the animation is happening faster, okay? In this case, I'm just gonna go to frame 12 or something around here, and then take the keyframe and put it there. Right? So we have created animation. And actually, let me take this one step farther and show you that right now, I'm gonna get in a little bit closer again. We have created a pretty kind of harsh line here. If I deselect this layer, you can see that this is just a very harsh line that's cutting this person right now. And we can actually soften this with a feature of masks that's known as mask feather, okay? So what we wanna do is quote unquote feather the edge of this mask, okay? So basically I could just set this to something like, 20 pixels, right? And then you can see here if I click off that it's just got a softer edge, and then the animation would look like this. Let me just widen it a little bit, right? So you kind of see that it's just got a nice and soft edge there, okay? So again, I just previewed that and I haven't explained how to. If you've never previewed anything in After Effects before, the way that you press play, quote unquote, is by pressing the spacebar button. But one thing to note is, so you see I have a 3-second composition, right? But I only have right now 12 frames of animation, which means if I play this down, I'm gonna play these 12 frames, and then I'm gonna play basically 2.5 seconds of nothing happening, and then it's gonna loop back and play this again. Here, watch. There's the animation, and now we're waiting, right? So it's kind of silly to wait 2.5 seconds to just watch these 12 frames. So basically what I can do is there's a work area up here. It's this gray bar on top that has these blue ends. And if I take the end of the work area and bring this back to just say around frame 15 or something, now I can just preview that amount, right? By pressing spacebar, right? And you'll notice that in After Effects, things play back in loops, all right? So you just sort of want to widen this work area out enough that you can kind of see your animation. Great. Keyframes are awesome. Let's go ahead and make some more. Great, so let's animate this top triangle, okay? And I want it to move up, so we're gonna animate position, and I want it to land in this spot, okay? So let me go to frame 10 or something, and I'm gonna close down my photo for 1 second. I'm gonna select triangle 1, and I'm gonna press P to reveal the position. So let me make my first position keyframe here by, that's right, clicking the stopwatch. Okay, now I've made my first keyframe. And now let me move back again to the beginning of the composition. And let me take this and move this down. I don't know how much, definitely not, let me widen out a little bit. Definitely not to the bottom, maybe to something like here, okay? Great, and now because I've changed the value, it is now made the second keyframe, although this one happens first. But if we press this button here to solo just this layer, now I can preview the animation just for that, right? It just moves up and in place, okay? And just in case it's not clear, what keyframes mean are, in this case, this keyframe here means that this triangle has a position value of this, all right? And it's at this place, right? And at this moment in time. And then later on, 10 frames later, it's here, okay? And After Effects makes the animation between those two keyframes. Great, let me unsolo this now, and we can watch that with the animation of the photo at the same time. Cool. Now, one thing we have to be careful of is that right here, let me get in a little bit closer, you can actually see that I'm going to select the photo layer and press U to reveal the keyframes, okay? So right now you can see that we are revealing that this is cut off in a way that we don't want to at this point. So this animation of the triangle has to land here by now, okay, so we do not reveal that gag of the leg. Otherwise, we could also take both sets and maybe push these back if we want the animation of the triangle to be a little bit longer, though we do actually create more of a problem, so we would have to move this back as well. Okay, so you just want to be careful about that. If I play these together, right, that looks really nice. Cool. All right, so now let's actually animate this second triangle. I'm going to turn this photo off for 1 sec, okay, and let me go ahead and I'm going to select my second triangle here and press P, make a position keyframe by clicking on the stopwatch. And now let me go back to the beginning and widen out. And this one, I want to move a bunch. So I'm just going to use my arrow keys and shift. And I'm going to move it pretty much all the way off screen or just somewhere like that. Okay. So now this would look like that, right? So they move up, but they're separated and we're aware that they're kind of animating differently. Cool. And what I could actually do to accentuate that is take the second keyframe for the second triangle, the bottom triangle, and kind of offset that animation a little bit by making this happen, by making this end a little bit later, all right? So now they're moving at different speeds, which is kind of cool because basically you often want to create contrast in all sorts of different ways when you animate, okay? I mean, when you design as well, but in animation, you can also create contrast by having things, for example, move at different rates, okay? So let's preview what this looks like all together. Yeah, and it's a good start. Great. Now, I should point out that all of the keyframes that we've made so far are linear. So as you can see here, the default keyframes that get made when we press the stopwatch button are these diamond-shaped ones here, okay? And these are linear keyframes. And what that means is that the animation moves at a steady rate between the keyframes without any acceleration or deceleration at all, okay? That's what After Effects defaults to. And unfortunately, that makes for a very boring animation, okay? And also a very unnaturalistic animation because nothing in real life moves at exactly a steady rate without any acceleration or deceleration, right? So After Effects has a function called easy ease, or ease if you're into the whole brevity thing, which changes the animation between the keyframes, okay, to have a slow start and a slow end, a slow in and a slow out, okay? And in order to put ease or easy ease on these linear keyframes, or to convert linear keyframes to ease, what we have to do is I'm gonna right click or control click here, and that opens this sort of sub menu, and I can go down here to Keyframe Assistant and easy ease, okay? And when I click this, we'll put easy ease on these keyframes. Or you can see here that there's a beloved shortcut, which is the F9 button on your keyboard. Now, sometimes you also have to press Function and F9 if your computer is using the F9 key for something else, like for example, to go to the next music track or whatever, all right? So F9 or Function F9, or you can right click and then go to Easy Ease and Keyframe Assistant Easy Ease, okay? And when I do that, boop, now those diamond-shaped keyframes have been converted to hourglass-shaped ease keyframes, okay? So the hourglass shape, I believe, is there because it's sort of telling you that something's going on with the time, okay? If you think of an hourglass as like a time indicator, what's going on here is now these have a slow in and a slow out, okay? And let's look at the way that looks in the animation itself, right? It's a little bit nicer, it's a little bit easier on the eye, and it's just a little bit more naturalistic. It's kind of a feel thing. If you don't see it right away, you'll get used to it. As I mentioned earlier, there are 3 basic kinds of keyframes in After Effects: linear, ease, and hold. Now, I love hold keyframes, so let me show you how they work. So I'm gonna animate the word balance here with only hold keyframes, okay, in 2 different ways. To begin with, let's have it blink on and off, like a little like neon sign, boop, 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 okay, something like that. Hold keyframes are really good for blinking animation, right? So I'm gonna press select all, Command A, and kind of close down on my layers. Then I'm gonna select the type layer here, and I'm gonna press T to reveal the opacity of that layer, okay? Opacity, right? And opacity, just in case you don't know, is sort of the opposite of transparency. So right now this is 100% opaque, the words here, which means that they're fully on screen, okay? But if I roll this down to 0% opacity, now they're fully transparent, okay? So you can see why this is great for kind of blinking animations, great. So let me make a keyframe for opacity, and let's figure this out. What I want is for this to start blinking around here, okay? So I'm gonna make a keyframe for opacity. Right now that's a linear keyframe, and I'm also gonna dial this down to 0, okay? So right now, we don't see the word balance at all, okay? So right now it's off, okay? The opacity is 0%. And if I move just say like a few frames down and roll this up, right? Now, as you know, After Effects will kind of create the animation between these states, right? So it's sort of like, you know, at a lower opacity now, and as it gets closer to 100%, you know, the opacity goes up and up, right? You get this now, I hope. But what if we don't want After Effects to animate between here? In other words, we just want this to be 0, and then when it gets here, we want it to be 100% all at once with no quote-unquote interpolation between the keyframes. Well, that's what hold keyframes are for, okay? So if I select both my keyframes, I'm gonna hit Option and Command, press Option and Command, and then I can click on here to convert those to hold keyframes, which are kind of squared off. Or if you don't want to do that, I'm going to undo that. I can right click on here, okay, and instead of going down to Keyframe Assistant, I just go right here to toggle hold keyframe, right? Boop. When I do that, it turns these into hold keyframes, okay? And just in case this isn't clear, right now, okay, this is a 0% keyframe, and it's holding the value of 0% until it gets to this next keyframe, and then it changes all at once to this value, which is 100%, right? So if we look at this animation, it's like off, and then boop, it just clicks on, right? Great. So that's what we want, except for we want it to then also blink off and then blink on again, okay? And we want this to be in the right spot. So I made this hold keyframe here, but this one could be like anywhere. It could be back at the beginning of the layer. But what's important is when this second one comes on, because that's when the animation is going to kind of start, right? So I'm going to put that one here. And I'm going to go 2 more frames. By the way, I pressed page down on my extended keyboard. Page up and page down move you individual frames up and down in your composition, okay? But if not, you could always just click here and just move 2 frames, right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower this down to 0 again, okay? And now that's made another hold keyframe there, okay? And now I'm going to go 2 more frames, or maybe 4 frames or something, and then I'm going to move this back up to 100. I could also have copied this keyframe here and copied and pasted that there as well, because that was 100%, right? So now check out the animation that I just made. Right? And so, you know, if I want to delay this final blink a little bit less, I can push this forward. You know, individual frames are going to mean a bunch here. Yeah, I think I like that better. It's just a little bit faster, okay? Right? And for example, if I were to push this forward here, then it would blink on and then blink off much more rapidly. Right? Which I don't like as much. I think I like it best like that. Okay, cool. So now I want to animate this one other way, also using hold keyframes, okay, and a mask, right? Because keyframes and masks are amazing tools in After Effects. So I'm going to choose my rectangle tool and a rectangle, right? And I've got my type layer selected, okay? So what I want to do is actually, I'm going to have this start just as an A, okay? I kind of like the triangular centered nature of this letter compared to these triangles. I think that's kind of fun. So when this kind of comes in, it's going to blink on as an A, right? And then I want to use hold keyframes to expand the mask right and left to reveal the rest of the letters, okay? So I'm going to open my mask here, right? And I'm going to make a mask path keyframe by, that's right, clicking on the stopwatch. Okay, that's made a default linear keyframe, but I'm going to Option Command and click on that to make that a hold keyframe now, okay? And I'm going to move that keyframe also just back to the beginning just for the sake of organization. Okay, so it comes in, it blinks on, and then around here, I want to have the mask animation happen, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this side of the mask, and I'm going to pull this over here till it reveals the N. Then I'm going to select this side of the mask. I'm going to use my arrow keys here, and I'm going to get it so that it now says LAN, okay? And just in case that's not clear, it was an A, and then when it hits this keyframe right here, boop, now it says LAN. Now I'm gonna move 2 more frames, and now I'm gonna select my mask again, and I'm gonna kind of do the same thing. I'm gonna select this side, all right, click there, and I'm gonna use my arrow keys and make sure that my C is on, and I'll marquee over this side and do this, okay? I move 2 more frames, and now I'm gonna get the B in there, right? And I'll select this, and I'll get the E in there as well, okay? And so what this looks like is this, all right? Let me widen out the work area a little bit. Yeah, and that's really nice. I totally like that. Now, I just want to say, if these had not been hold keyframes, here, let's make these non-hold keyframes. I'm gonna Command click on there and convert those back to linear. And right now, you can see what I wanted to avoid, okay? Which was, with the mask not acting as a hold, it's kind of sliding across, right? Which means that it's kind of revealing pieces of the letters that I don't want to see. I want this more like a typewriter, like each letter just comes on its own, okay? So that's why I used hold keyframes here, to avoid like pieces of letters, all right? So I'm gonna go ahead and select those, and once again, Option Command click to turn those into hold keyframes. And let's look at our animation again. Yeah, I think that looks really cool. Moving on, let's now animate the smaller details, starting with those pluses. Great, so even though this is one shape layer here that contains 4 different pluses, we can animate this in one layer, okay? And the way that I'm gonna do this is to show you how to do that with the properties panel, which I love, okay? So what I'm gonna do is kind of find a good moment in time, you know, when everything else is coming up, like maybe around here somewhere, right? And now I'm gonna select +1 and actually I'm gonna select all the pluses up here in the properties panel, okay? +1 through 4, I just held down on Shift. And now, at this point in time, I'm gonna make a position keyframe for all of those by pressing this button, okay? And now, if I get here and press U to reveal all animated properties, you can see now that the position of all of those now has a keyframe, okay? A linear keyframe. So now I'm gonna go back to the beginning of the composition, and I'm going to animate these to move down so that they're kind of moving up, just like everything else as it goes on, okay? So I'm gonna select +1 and +2, since I want both of these to be moving together up and down, okay? And now I'm gonna animate just the Y position of this, okay? So if I move this down, I'm kind of rolling this down, you can see that the pluses are sort of moving down. And I don't wanna move them too far down. This is probably more than enough, okay? And then I'm gonna select +3 and +4, okay? And these are down here at the bottom. And I'm gonna move these down and off screen there like that, okay? I don't have to move them down a lot because there's no need in animating them a whole bunch off screen here, okay? So now we can look at the animation here, great. Now, it looks like these are taking too long and I've made them too long. So what I'm gonna do is figure out like when I want these to really land. I think I want the top ones to land before the A blinks, so it's not sort of taking my eye away from that. So I'm gonna move these 2 keyframes there. And then the bottom ones, it's kind of nice if they're offset from the top. So let's see, how many frames is this? 1, 2, 3? Yeah, so that's probably fine. What I'm gonna do now is select all of those linear keyframes, okay? And I'm gonna press F9 to put some E's on there. And let's check that out. Yeah, that's pretty cool. What I think is that the ones here at the bottom, if you look down here at the bottom, they're moving kind of slow. So what I'm gonna do is just take these first 2 keyframes, which are, you know, they're off screen anyway, and I'm gonna move these also 3 frames this way so that it's just a little bit faster. Yeah, I like that better. Cool. So now let's animate this School of Motion logo that's down here at the bottom, okay? I'm gonna select my pluses and twirl that down to kind of create some more real estate for myself here. And here's my School of Motion logo here. And let's check this out. So this logo is kind of covered up by this blue triangle as it moves up. So that's one thing. But let's just figure out when we want it to land. Maybe around here. Let's see. Maybe it should take a little bit longer and get here around frame 20. I don't know, we can always change this to the end, all right? So I'm gonna press P to reveal the position, and I'm gonna, boop, press that stopwatch to make my first linear keyframe here for position. Now I'm gonna move back to the beginning, or to where this is like, covered, okay? And now I'm just gonna kind of roll this down so that it's off screen there, as I assume it's off screen there, yep. And just have it so that it's kind of coming up. I can actually move this up a little bit. I want it so that it's really clearly moving up as this triangle moves up. And actually this doesn't look right either. What I'm gonna do is move this. I think I moved it too far down. So I'm gonna move this up just a little bit. All right. Yeah, like that. Okay, so let me just check the timings of that. I like that. Yeah, cool. And let me put some E's on here as well. Function F9 or F9, depending on your computer. Cool. That still looks a little slow to me, actually. So let me see what happens if I move this up. A little too fast, widen it out a little, split the diff. Cool. And let's see if we delay it actually even a little bit more. Nope. Now we can see it moving there. So let me move this down. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, cool. It's sort of finishing off the animation there. Cool. Great. So now I actually want to use a mask and do one more thing to this, which I think would make it a little bit more special. So here's where it starts. I'm actually going to trim the layer to start right here, okay? And I go to here, and what I want to do is I want to break this up in two. Right now, this logo consists of these triangles on top and then the words School of Motion at the bottom, okay? What I want to do is separate that using a mask, so that I have just the logo on top and then just the words, and then I could have a little bit of offset in their animation, which would just make this a little bit more special and a little bit more fun, and it would make the logo feel a little bit more considered, which is what you want to give to your clients, all right? So I'm going to select the layer and choose my rectangle tool. I could press Q also. I'm going to kind of marquee and just making sure that I'm getting the logo part on top. Great. Now I'm going to select this layer and Command D, duplicate it. And on this bottom one, I've already got my mask revealed. So what I want to do is, if it wasn't revealed, I could have pressed M, okay? And then I want to make this a subtract mask. So now this layer has the words and this layer has the triangles, okay? And then all I have to do is I'm going to press U to show the keyframes of both of them. And then what I could do is kind of like move this one up a few frames so that there's some offset between these. And now it would animate kind of like that, right? It's just a little bit more special. And we could, the farther we move this back, the more offset there is between those. Now it's a little bit ridiculous to put too much space in there, but getting this just right, you can make a really fun little animation here. Yeah, I love that. Cool. So now finally, let's work on the top and bottom dots, these textural things here, okay? So let me widen out, okay? And actually, these dots are a little bit hard to see, so I'm gonna do that same thing where I press this button here to solo these two, and I'm gonna solo my background because otherwise they're really impossible to see, right? So let me actually just solo the top ones and move those up to the top. Getting rid of the bottom one for 1 sec. So what I wanna do is also use a mask to animate this on, all right? So this is gonna be pretty subtle. And go back here to the beginning, and I'm gonna mask, I don't really need to mask every one of these lines on because you're really not gonna see this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna mask it like this to begin with, sort of about a third of it, okay? And then I'm gonna go ahead and press mask path to make my, the first keyframe for my mask path. And I'm gonna move like 10 frames, maybe 15 frames, okay? And I'm just gonna marquee over this to grab this part of the mask path and move this up, okay? Until that's up there, right? So this is just sort of doing this. Yeah, this is very subtle, okay? So now let me turn on my bottom dots as well, and I'm gonna kind of do the same thing. And go back to the beginning, I'm going to press Q to grab my rectangle tool, and I'm just gonna kind of pull, I don't know, like these, many of those on there to begin with, okay? And I'm gonna press Option and M to make my first mask path keyframe. I didn't talk about that shortcut. Option M is kind of good. Now I'm going to move to frame 15 again and select my arrow tool and grab these and now move this up so this is fully on. Okay, great. Now what I can do is twirl that down and we can look at just the dots together, which is pretty underwhelming. Right, it's very hard to see. Cool, so let me unsolo all of those now and we can look at this all together, right? Okay, so we're done animating. Now, one thing that I would probably do if it was me would be to adjust all of the ease keyframes in the graph editor. All right, so this is definitely advanced, and this is definitely a tease of the kind of thing that you will learn if you get further into After Effects. But if I press select all, Command A, and then press U, right? What I want to do is take all of the keyframes and just make sure that they all have easy ease by pressing F9, okay? And then all of the ones that are eased, I want to grab those, okay? So not these hold keyframes up top here, but all the other keyframes, okay? And then I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger here, and I'm gonna press this button here, which is the mystical portal into the graph editor. When I do this, you can see now I am in my graph, okay? And what we wanna do is just adjust all of the keyframes, okay? So for example, I wanna select all of the first keyframes for all of the animation, right? Go back to my graph, and now those are all selected. What I could do is push those this way so that that animation happens a lot sooner or faster so that it doesn't actually delay at the start, just happens really quickly. And then if I get back here, okay, and select all of the end keyframes, minus that one there, okay, I can grab these all in the graph and pull these this way, right? Maybe not too extremely, but so that they have a nice, even much more slower in, okay? This probably doesn't make sense, but check the way that this influences that animation now. Yeah, it's a little bit easier, and it's just like moving a little bit more rapidly at the start and comes to a nice ease a little bit better. Now, of course, there are way more than 3 tools that you need to learn about if you want to be a good animator. If you want to become very comfortable with After Effects, you should definitely sign up for my course, After Effects Kickstart. This interactive course teaches you everything you need to know about the tools, techniques, and principles that professional motion designers use every day. You'll also get to practice everything you learn through fun projects, and you'll even get feedback on your work from professionals. It's definitely the best way to learn After Effects, and if you want to learn more, please visit the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss anything, and happy animating.